Good evening, I'm Ann Davis. Welcome to Mackworth in Derby. We are here at Christ the King Catholic Church because for 18 years during the 1960s and 1970s, this was home to a priest, Father Francis Paul Cullen. He was a respected member of the community here. He presided over funerals, over christenings, over confirmations. He was well known by the whole community, but he had a very dark secret. He was a sexual predator and he preyed on children, not only here, but also in Buxton and in Nottingham. Well, this afternoon, as he stood trial for 21 charges of sexual abuse against children, he pleaded guilty. 3 of those victims are now pursuing civil compensation claims. Now, coming up, we'll be looking at how he was actually on the run for about 20 years and how he was finally captured. We'll also be talking to a support group who help people who have been abused by victims of the church. But first of all, this was the police reaction to today's events.
Although Father Cullen comes across in court today as a frail, elderly man, we need to consider the length of time which he offended for, the victims that he offended against in terms of how old they were, how vulnerable they were, how he'd abused that position of trust. And today is, as you said, a degree of closure for those victims, and I'm really just happy for them.
Well, Mike O'Sullivan was in court today. Here's his report on how Cullen was a lifelong abuser of children.
A predatory priest, Father Francis Paul Cullen abused 7 young victims, boys and girls, over 34 years. Today pleading guilty at Derby Crown Court to 21 offences in parishes in Derby, Buxton and Nottingham.
His actions are pure evil. The sexual abuse of any person, particularly a child, an innocent child, is absolute evil, and it cannot be justified in any sense whatsoever.
One word that springs to mind would probably be abhorrent. Looking at the position that he held, it was normally a position of trust in relation to these 7 complainants, and that's a position which he clearly has abused.
Father Cullen, originally from Dublin, was ordained in Birmingham in 1953. He joined the Diocese of Nottingham. He came to Derby in the 50s to prepare the way for this church, Christ the King in Mackworth. From 1957 into the 1970s, he abused 4 altar boys, some as young as 6, abusing some into their mid-teens. Father Cullen helped the Catholic community here to build this church. He was the parish priest here for 18 years. One parishioner told me that for many people, he was a charismatic priest. In 1978, Father Cullen moved to Buxton. He was the parish priest at St Anne's for 9 years. The abuse continued. He targeted a young girl and a teenage girl. The focal point of the parish, he was pictured with Bob Geldof in the 1980s. Father Cullen retired on the grounds of ill health in October 1987, returning to Ireland. Just under a year later, he said he was well enough to come back, this time as parish priest at St Mary's in Hyson Green in Nottingham. He abused an 11-year-old altar boy. In September 1991, he retired for the 2nd time on the grounds of ill health. A month later, he faced sex abuse charges relating to St Mary's and jumped bail. The Diocese of Nottingham says it knew nothing about abuse allegations before the St Mary's case. Some people might say there must have been a cover-up at the time, it was just swept under the carpet, it was just moved around to get rid of the problem that way.
Yeah. All I can say is that I have seen absolutely no evidence of a cover-up, because I've seen no evidence that his abusive behaviour was reported to the bishop at the time.
The police say they can't verify a claim by one Derby victim from the early 1960s that his family did report church. What they can say is that Father Cullen was extradited last year from Tenerife after 22 years on the run, thanks to information from the Diocese of Nottingham.
They've been instrumental in helping Derbyshire Police locate Father Cullen in Tenerife. That's helped us to obtain the European arrest warrant, which then has enabled us to bring him back to this country.
3 of the victims are making civil compensation claims against the diocese, and the church is resuming its own inquiry into Father Cullen's career. an inquiry that will report to the Vatican in a few months. Mike O'Sullivan, BBC East Midlands Today.
Well, Mike told me that outside the court he came across a mother. She was in tears. She said she felt betrayed by her priest. She knew Cullen and she felt she'd put her children, who were altar boys, in danger. This is all now about the victims of the abuse. A little earlier, I spoke to one of the communications officer for the Catholic Church for the East Midlands. He was actually in Rome. He is Father Andrew Cole, and I asked him what his reaction was.
I'm pleased that Cullen has taken responsibility for his offences. I'm pleased that he's pleaded guilty to those offences today and that he's awaiting sentencing in a month's time. And I hope that today's verdict will help to bring a sense of peace and healing to those whom he has abused over the years. These are people who have suffered grievously, and it's important that their voice has been heard after many, many years, and it's thanks to their bravery that Cullen has pleaded guilty today. We will certainly try to do our best to help all victims of abuse, whoever they may be, when they come to us. And I would hope that anybody who has been abused by anybody will come forward, because child abuse is an absolutely wicked thing. It is an evil thing. And I hope that all those who have been abused by anybody, whether it's from the church or in any other aspect of society, will come forward and report that to the police so that they can actually start to receive the help that they need to come to terms with what's happened to them and to help bring their perpetrators to justice.
Well, with me now, I have two guests. David Greenwood, you're from a support group that help people who've been abused by members of the clergy. And also here we have John Ashfield, who's a member of the parish council. And you actually knew Father Cullen. Yes. What was he like?
He was a charismatic young priest who'd been sent in here to set up this parish you see around you. And he did that with the help of the Mackworth people. And
you had no idea about this other side of him, no indication at all?
None at all.
Were you surprised?
Surprised and horrified.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And now we said you're a member of a support group who help people who have been abused by a member of the clergy. The Catholic Church are possibly renowned for not dealing with this situation very well. Do you think that's improving?
Certainly improving in terms of the words that they put out. I'd like to see more action. We've spent years campaigning to try and improve transparency within the Catholic Church, but still their system is to rely on secret courts, secret internal courts, where bishops take all the decisions, and allegations of this type are kept from the police.
Now, there will be an inquiry which will go to the Vatican. Do you have any hope of this?
I'm always hopeful, I'm always optimistic that things can change and that this new Pope can inject some transparency into the whole subject, but actions speak louder than words.
And how important is a day like today, when Father Cullen actually admitted his guilt, to the people who have been abused?
Oh, it's really significant to have justice seen to be done. You can imagine that lots of people, possibly some still out there, who haven't yet come forward, will have been dreading this day and wondering whether it would ever come.
OK, well, both of you, thank you very much indeed. As we have heard, Father Cullen escaped justice for many years, and a lot of that time he spent actually on the island of Tenerife. It's strange, really, because so many people holiday make there from the East Midlands, and yet there he stayed for many years. Our reporter Simon Hare went over to the island. He actually met a priest who Father Cullen confided into. Here's his report.
Holidaymakers and expats come here to escape the British winter. Cullen came here to escape British justice for more than 2 decades. In the busy resort of Los Cristianos stand the Los Alicios apartments. It seems he spent most of those years living here in a modest 1-bedroom apartment. He ended up leaving over a debt of €9,000 for unpaid community fees. He'd earned a living by running errands for a local shop. He told some people he had been an architect in Australia, but he had an altogether more truthful account for a man of the same faith. The parish priest says Cullen used to visit his church regularly to pray. Then, one day, came a partial confession.
Perhaps 2 years ago he told me, "Hello, I'm a priest." I was surprised because I have seen him before, just a normal person, many years, and then suddenly he was a priest. He appeared here and suddenly disappeared.
That's because last August he was arrested while visiting Mass at this church in the neighbouring resort of Playa de las Americas. The priest in charge here had recognised Cullen as a wanted man after an appeal for information that had originated from the Catholic Church back in Britain.
Do you fear he could have offended while he was here? Did he have access to children?
No, they have no access to children, no.
It appears he used his real name while in Tenerife, and he didn't attempt to hide.
We held our own in the first half.
David Elliott is originally from Matlock in Derbyshire and now runs a bar in Playa de las Americas. He says Cullen would easily have blended in.
It doesn't really surprise me that he could get away with it. There's such a lot of people here walking up and down the streets. It doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. It does seem a long length of time, I must admit.
Before Cullen was originally arrested and charged in 1991, he was already known to be a regular visitor here to Tenerife, which only raises the question, should he have been caught much sooner? Simon Hare, BBC East Midlands Today in Tenerife.
That report there from Simon Hare. Well, that's just about it from us for the moment from the Christ the King Church here at Mackworth in Derbyshire. For now, I hand you back to Dominic in the studio for the rest of the day's news.
And thank you.